6:30 CHED Afternoons with Jaylen Nye. Weekdays at 2 on 6:30 CHED.
Well, you know, it's a story that we've been following closely over the past few weeks on 6:30 CHED Afternoons, and it is the lack of movement by the Canadian government to get Afghan interpreters who worked alongside Canadian troops in Afghanistan out of that country as the Taliban continues to take more control of different parts of that country. The Panjwai district falling a couple of weeks back, right on Kandahar city's outskirts. And there is real concern about the safety of these interpreters who were instrumental in helping our Canadian troops. We talked with Major retired Quentin Innes last week about this. He worked directly with some of these interpreters, and we know that there are different organizations across the country trying to do the help, trying to get these interpreters to safety. Now, one of those groups is Not Left Behind. It was started by the family of Captain Nicola Goddard, Canada's first female soldier to die in combat, and this organization taking matters into its own hands. Andrew Rusk is the brother-in-law of Captain Goddard. He joins us this afternoon. Andrew, welcome to 6:30 CHED in Edmonton.
Thanks for having me.
Now, as you have been watching, and your family has been watching what is happening in Afghanistan with the gains that the Taliban has been making, what is going through your mind?
You know, it's just so concerning. We've watched the Taliban move in from the outskirts of the regions into more populated cities, and it's putting interpreters that used to work with the Canadian military at risk, but it's also putting at risk all of the other workers that the Canadian government employed. So if you were a driver, if you were a cook, if you were a cleaner, if you were a tradesperson working on the bases, the Taliban doesn't care that you weren't an interpreter. You were still working with us, and their lives are at risk as well right now. It's very concerning.
Yeah, and you know, as I read more and have read over the years about your sister-in-law, about Captain Goddard, and what she stood for, who she was, what she stood for, and about how she wanted to help. And one of the reasons why she joined the military is because she wanted to help. It must be very difficult for your family to think right now that heels are dragging on this.
It's difficult for our family. It's difficult for all veterans, because these veterans worked side by side with these interpreters. They worked side by side with their workers, with the other workers in Afghanistan as well. They were their colleagues. They were their friends. And when we start hearing stories of the direct threats and the direct violence these people are facing right now, it's not just them, but it's also their children. It's their wives. It's their parents that are getting direct threats from the Taliban, and we just aren't moving fast enough to take action.
Yeah, and I wonder what's going on. I'll be honest with you. I put in a request to the Immigration Minister, Marco Mendicino, earlier this week, and they wanted a list of questions prior to the interview, and I wasn't comfortable in doing that, so I said, I went on and just kind of forgot about that interview. He keeps saying that they're working on it, but we know that there was a program in place years back to bring families over, to bring those who worked alongside Canadian troops back to Canada and into the United States. I guess the question is why isn't that just being put back in place?
Because that old program wasn't good enough. So the program that was in place was time limited. So you needed to be working with the forces from 2007 to 2011, and you needed to be working there for at least a year. So the interpreter that was in the lab with Nicola when she was killed, the interpreter that took Nicola out of the lab so that CPR and first aid could be administered on him, he was not eligible because he was with the military in 2006. Yeah. And so there were gaps in the policy in the past. And when the government releases their plans, because they've said they will, we all need to be careful to make sure that everybody that's at risk from the Taliban is included in that, and we are giving them the safe haven that they deserve.
Yeah, Not Left Behind is a group co-founded by your family, by I think it's your wife who started it. You and your wife started this, and I was reading that you're taking matters into your own hand, and with the help of the others, with the help of others, helping to finance the safe transfer of up to it's been 20 families in the last few days. Can you tell us about that?
There's dozens of veterans from coast to coast that are working to identify interpreters and other staff that they served with and filing them in order to make sure that they are on the lists to be repatriated, and in the short term, trying to get them to safer ground. And so there's literally been dozens of service members as well as veterans that have been sending their own money over Western Union and MoneyGram and others to try and get them out of the outer regions that are no longer safe into safer areas of the country now.
All right, so that is a little bit of good news on this front, but really, it's the truth, Andrew. Time is ticking. Time is ticking on this.
It really is.
So what are you urging Canadians to do?
We need everybody to call their MPs. We need them to call their MPs today. We need them to call their MPs tomorrow. We need you to keep calling until they are safe. And when you call, you need to ask what your individual MP is doing in order to make sure these lives are saved, and insisting that it's not just interpreters, it's also the families of these interpreters and the staff of these interpreters, because we keep hearing the stories of their families and their children that are facing direct risks, direct threats, direct violence. We need to continue to put the pressure on to take action. And it's not just about pressuring the Liberals, it's also about encouraging O'Toole and his caucus to make sure that we're taking the right steps as well, and that we are all putting pressure on it, because the Liberals haven't been moving fast enough, but at the same time, the Conservatives haven't been vocal enough at pushing for these changes and advocating for these voices either. Is
there a way, if people wanted to help out financially, they can do so as well, Andrew?
We are launching a fund tomorrow. There will be a link at notleftbehind.ca that will go live. We're just working through the details with a charitable partner. And so we should have it up and running by that point in time. But anybody in the interim, if they want to go to notleftbehind.ca and send us an email, we will let them know as soon as it is up and running, because we want to make sure that we're funding the support in Afghanistan, as well as when these hopeful immigrants come to Canada, we also have the funding and the resources to help them settle properly as well.
The last, before I let you go, when I was talking with Major Retired Quentin Ennis last week, who was a public affairs officer, did 3 tours in Afghanistan, and he was telling me that the numbers that we're looking at is about 250. Is that the number that you have? How many people are we talking about here?
The latest number that we've been able to track is about 180 interpreters and staff. Okay. That's a number from about 2 days ago, but it's not just them, it's also their families.
That's right.
And so when you think about their children, their wives, oftentimes it's their parents or grandparents as well. There's going to be a larger group of people, but ultimately they supported us and they bought in on what they were doing. They believed in Canada, and now we need to help them, because their belief in us is what's putting them at risk.
Agreed with you 110%. Andrew Rusk joining me this afternoon. Let's stay in touch. We'll continue to follow this out here as well. Andrew, I appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care. Andrew Rusk is the brother-in-law of Captain Nicola Goddard, and she was one of Canada's 158 soldiers who died in Afghanistan. She was the first female soldier, Canada's first female soldier to die in combat. And you heard the story about the interpreter that pulled her out of the vehicle that she was in to perform CPR on her. When we talk about no one left behind, you know, that is something, and you hear that oftentimes when it comes to the military community. It's becoming even more so relevant right now, given the circumstances, given the pressure, given the urgency of getting these interpreters, drivers, all of those who worked alongside our troops, and as you heard Andrew say, who believed in Canada and who believed in helping Canadian soldiers do their job over there. Notleftbehind.ca is the website. Call your MP if this is something that you're believing in.